Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we're here for the sixth in what looks to be a 32-ish part series as we journey chapter by chapter through Fairy Tale by Stephen King. We will have a video for each chapter of the novel, as well as a review and opening paragraph, maybe a quotes video, top 10 quotes, but I am not sure because this is not shaping up to be a very quotable piece, which is not Stephen King's wheelhouse. Stephen King is not a quote machine. He is a story machine. And we are maybe not getting much of that yet either. There are a lot of balls in the air, but nothing really being caught or released. So what we've got here in this video is we've got addressing comments, which really here is just a single comment. We've got a So What Happened portion where we recap what happened in this chapter. We have a lit crit portion and a writer's notes portion. And we're going to get back to the, what happened here a couple different times in this video. So the very first thing is comments. There's just one comment today, and it comes to us from Angelica, who says she has fallen off because it's boring. This is probably not all that difficult to understand because I don't think this is the type of book that this type of live series is good for. So if you're catching this video live, you know that we're doing Monday and Wednesday uploads. Friday are for my short stories, poetry, opening paragraphs, writer's quotes, things like that. So we get Monday and Wednesday, and then we don't have another chapter until Monday and Wednesday. This is not the type of book for that. This is a book that I think is almost indubitably aimed to be a quick burn, aimed to be sit down, read 7 chapters, and you'll remember everything that you consumed by tomorrow. If this were that type of read, maybe the pacing would be better. But as of now, especially with this chapter, the pacing seems to me to be a bit off. Now I have, if I could solicit responses in the comments section, far be it from me. Is this what you expected? Further, is this what you had hoped for? Personally, when I heard that Stephen King was writing a book called Fairy Tale, I had imagined that it would be something closer to Grimm's, but that does not seem to be what we are being geared up towards, despite Bowditch having some Rumpelstiltskin type tendencies popping up in this chapter. I am not sure if that is what I expected or what I hoped for. I think that when you have an author who is so roundly associated with the type of books that I have read from him, I was expecting something more along the horror genre. But if I was going to be jumping whole hog into a book called Fairy Tale, pardon me, no S, nope, not plural, singular. If I knew that I were jumping whole hog into a book called Fairy Tale, I wouldn't want it to be a classic fairy tale either. I would want something more along the lines of what I would expect to be getting from a Stephen King in general novel. So I don't know if this is what I had hoped for. Well, I know it's not what I hoped for. I know it's not what I had expected. But what I'm questioning with my own readership is whether or not what I hoped and what I expected were different for this book. Do you think they were for you? I think that when something is so very outside of the norm for an author like this seems to be. Now, I haven't read every Stephen King. I admittedly probably have limited exposure to the canon of King. But when someone is, like I say, so associated with horror, is this being so far from the wheelhouse, at least so far, acceptable? What you had wanted, what you had hoped for, what you had expected, things like that. So, what happened in this, the 6th chapter to Fairy Tale? Charlie goes to see Bowditch in the hospital. It turns out he's rung up about $100,000 in medical bills. Not really all that hard to do, not really all that surprising, not really. Um, in fact, I would have imagined 2 surgeries I think he's already had. He's been in the hospital itself for over a week now, right? I would imagine this to be over $100,000. They say that it's 50 just to get the ambulance ride. Now, again, this was being written for about a decade ago. And look, not here to talk politics, but one of the things that happens when government spending is introduced, I don't know why we're talking about that. Maybe I should. One of the things that happens when government spending is introduced to any field in the way that the government entered healthcare in the '08 type era is that costs skyrocket. You don't have to make it for cheap. Why would you? The government's going to pay for it. And that's what happens to programs and the way that governments are taken advantage of in that way. Anyway, I don't know why I was there, but he racked up about $100,000 bill, and Bowditch talked it down to 80-ish thousand, but he needs Charlie to, quote unquote, make it possible. He goes to Bowditch's safe, where we get on 91. Bowditch sends Charlie to his safe, and this is what is explained to us that is waiting in the safe. On the floor of the safe was what Mr. Bowditch had told me I'd find, a big steel bucket with a knapsack laid over the top. I picked up the knapsack and saw that the bucket was filled almost to the top with those BBs that weren't BBs, but solid gold pellets. Later, he tells him later he goes home to have dinner with Dad, and Dad tells him, I've got a meeting at 9. It's that apartment house fire that I told you about. Turns out it may have been arson. Now, maybe I'm being presumptive, but I imagine that's coming back to us. Charlie's mission is to take the gold pellets to a guy named Heinrich. Wilhelm Heinrich. Which tells him Schnell, Schnell, Schnell. He is to take these gold pellets to Heinrich in order to have them cashed. Heinrich tries to talk some info out of Charlie, and Christopher Pauli keeps popping up, at least in name. Christopher Pauli this, Christopher Pauli that. Did Christopher Pauli see me? Yada, yada, yada. Gonna come back later. Maybe with the house fire. Is Christopher Pauli an arsonist? Bowditch is brought back home by a doctor and an orderly, and Charlie is in charge of his medications, including OxyContin. Very dangerous. And he promises, does Charlie, to keep these oxys in a safe upstairs, the same safe from which he withdrew the gold. There's a short conversation with Bowditch. Then he goes home and he has a short conversation with Dad. In the conversation with Bowditch, this is very interesting. Maybe I should save this for the lit crit portion of the video, but I didn't write this down. In the conversation with Bowditch, Charlie is worried about Bowditch getting older. In the conversation with Dad, Dad is admiring how old Charlie is getting. So there's a little bit of setup there as well, a little bit of mirroring. How are these alike? How are these different? Moving on to the lit crit portion of this video. It is told to us again that Bowditch lives at 1 Sycamore. First Sycamore. Sycamore. Why Sycamore? Well, what is a sycamore? A sycamore is a tree that grows on average 3 to 5 feet a year. That's a lot. That is a very quick growing tree. But I don't think, if there's any reason that's thrown in, that is the reason that it's thrown in. A sycamore pops up in the Bible. And if you're going to start references anywhere in the English language, the Bible's not a bad place to start. In the Bible, the sycamore has a special place to Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus? 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 Zacchaeus, I believe. I've never heard this name talked about. I know the name tertiarily, but apparently it is a name in its meaning, in its roots, that has purity and innocence therein. So, what is the story with Zacchaeus, the pure, the innocent, and a sycamore tree? Well, Zacchaeus was a tax collector. Very bad guy, right? Verboten. Very bad guy was Zacchaeus. And Jesus is coming to town to give a talk. Zach finds himself a sycamore tree and tries to catch a sight of Jesus. Tries to say, there he is. I'm going to watch him preach. But Jesus, for what he's doing, says, hey, get down from there. I want to go home from you. I want to go home with you. Get down from that tree. I want to go home with you. Very strange pickup line, if that's what it is, but it's not. It is sort of a referendum on classic religion to this point, as a lot of the things that Jesus did were. Jesus was a religious revolutionary. And basically what's going on there is Zach was a sinner, a tax collector. Bad guy, not great. And Jesus wants to go home with him, wants him to show him his house. So, here, do we have, I think it's, the automatic tendency would be to associate the Christ-like figure with Bowditch, because Zacchaeus is the one climbing foreign to the sycamore tree, and we sort of see Jesus as the person who has the reputation, right? Reputation we associate with being older. So in this reading, we're sort of tempted to associate Zach with Charlie, Jesus with Bowditch. However, when we look at Charlie's house, when we look at Charlie's life, Charlie's an only child. Charlie, now, Jesus, not an only child, is he? Got a little bit of a controversy there, huh? But we don't know what brother meant. However, was a brother like, this is my brother? Was a brother as in, we're blood related in the immediacy? It's hard to say, but where was I? I've lost myself. And I'll get back to why I've lost myself in a little bit. But it is tempting for us to also cast Charlie in the role of Messiah, in the role of the Christ in this story. After all, it is Bowditch who is living in the sycamore, trying to catch a sight of the Alpha and the Omega. We have yet to see Charlie embody the Omega type personality, but the Alpha type personality for sure. But also, like I got into a little bit earlier, when you think about Jesus' life, Jesus was born in a manger to Joseph and Mary. Father, mother, son. In that story, the Bible story, it is Jesus who sacrifices. It is Jesus who is taken so that the others might survive, might live a true life, right? Here, Mother already made the sacrifice. A lot of the mythos around Jesus in the Bible, depending on where you're going, depending on who you're going to for the stories, is that Jesus was an amalgamation of the masculine and the feminine. Joseph, for all he's worth, is only mentioned a handful of times in the Bible, at least if I'm remembering correctly. Mother Mary is a prominent-ish type figure. Still, Not all that many references, but the references that she gets are there for keeps. So if we have Bowditch as Zack climbing up the sycamore tree, living at one sycamore, and we are casting Charlie as our Savior, will Charlie get a passion? The Passion of the Christ, right? That is not just a catchy movie title from Mel Brooks. It is something that harkens back even to the Greek days, Patheon. But probably even before that. It's going to be interesting to see that going forward. On page 105, we get this. Bowditch is talking to Charlie and says, I have never minded being alone before, but now it's different. Do you know what falling off that ladder taught me, or rather re-taught me? I shook my head. Fear. I'm an old man, and I'm broken. He said this without self-pity, but as a man states a fact. Fear. I am an old man, and I am broken. Woof. That's a heavy, heavy scene there. A lot going on there. Do we believe Bowditch? I think I believe him. How much is belief in that moment worth? What is the character development there? Bowditch realizing the Sigma type personality, realizing the Sigma type lifestyle has not treated him well. Next page, 106. Bowditch has told Charlie to go get his dinner with his father and put his father's nerves at ease, and he tells him this. Don't be late coming back, or I'll try to get up and find those pills. He closed his eyes. Bad idea, I said. Without opening them, he said, the universe is full of them. I like that quote. Bad idea. The universe is full of them. Yeah. But why did he go to the universe scale immediately? The universe is full of them? Really? Why not, the neighborhood is full of them? We get what Mr. Bowditch feels about other people in the neighborhood. Why are we going straight to the universe level here? Further on page 106, the second thing that I have highlighted here is Dad talking to Charlie and Charlie responding. Dad says, I saw you come out and talk to a young woman while I was halfway up the hill. I waved, but you didn't see me. You looked like you were concentrating hard on whatever it was she was telling you. Charlie replies, and you've been waiting out here since then? To which Father replies, I thought about knocking on the door, but I guess in this situation I'm like a vampire. I can't come in until I'm invited. I believe this is the second reference in 100 pages to vampires. Now, second reference in 100 pages might not seem all that much, but this book's 600 pages, right? That's 1/6. That's like 13% of the book. You've got a reference to vampires every 7% of the book. Maybe there's something else going on there. Either way, whether there is or not, what we're looking at is Stephen King making a reference to the ghoulish in the real world. Possibly worth talking about a little bit more later. Finally, the writer's notes. On 89 and 90, Stephen King tells us, here is what I want you to do, coming from Bowditch. He told me. When he was done, he asked me if I needed him to write it down. It's okay if you do, as long as you destroy it with your notes when your job's done. Maybe just the safe combination. I'll write it on my arm, then wash it off. You'll do it? Yes. I couldn't imagine not doing it. If only to find out if what he was telling me was real. Good. I'll repeat the steps, good. Repeat the steps back to me. I did. This is not how you build actual suspense in a story. This is manufactured suspense. This suspense is Stephen King knows what's going on and he's just not telling us. This is not real suspense. This is fake suspense. This is withholding elements from the reader as opposed to building a reader's interest in the events naturally. You want to build interest in the events naturally. What you do is you have him telling Charlie, look, you've got to do this thing. You've got to take these gold pellets to Heinrich. Now, whatever you do, don't ask Heinrich any questions. Don't give Heinrich any answers. Just get that trade for the best price you think you can get. That's going to build real suspense. When Stephen King tells us, he told me what to do, and I said I could do it, instead of giving us the excerpt of the conversation where these things are expressed, he just says that. That is building manufactured suspense. And Stephen King's better than that. Stephen King knows how to build suspense. Penultimate thing I want to talk about here. This is, I believe, so far the longest chapter. I think the second longest chapter is chapter 1 or chapter 2, which was 20 pages. This is a 22-page chapter. This is a chapter where the least of all, in my opinion, actually happens. This is the chapter where the least character development goes on. This is the chapter where there are fewer things to look at. This is the chapter where there's fewer things to listen to. He's telling us about these gold pellets dropping in this bucket. No part of me believes that Stephen King does not have a bucket full of gold pellets. He's Stephen King. Why wouldn't he? He's sold more books than God. But he doesn't really go into how that sounds. If you are a... what do they call them? Well, they call the silver guys silver bugs. But if you are a precious metals person, one of the things you can tell, so a lot of people search, quote unquote, search coins. If you were, for example, counting a register and you had those coins dropping in, you can hear the difference between a silver coin. Now, I know the sound of silver. I don't know the sound of gold. Could you, Stephen King, explain it to us when you were talking about the pellets going through? When you were talking about going through the pellets, pardon me, I had that order wrong. And I've got to be honest with you. I've got to share an embarrassing story here. So here's my daily routine. I work overnights. I work 9 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. overnights, 5 days a week. My routine is I get up, I go to work. I wake up at about 7:45 p.m. I go to work at 9. I work until 5:30. Today it was a little longer. Then I go straight to Starbucks. I go straight to Starbucks to get my work done, to get my reading in, to get the notes taken for this video, to get my writing in. I consider myself a writer as well. And I'm working on a couple other projects as well. And I get the work on those things there done too. Today, I get to Starbucks. And after Starbucks, I go walk between 3 and 8 miles. Somewhere in there. Go get my exercise in, come back, film these videos, edit these videos, not a whole lot of editing, but a little bit, upload the videos, make the thumbnails, post the videos, go to bed, wake up at 7:45, do it all over again, right? Today I'm at Starbucks. This is stop 2, by the way. Stop 2, then I have to get my exercise in, then I have to come back and shoot 2 videos today. Then I have to edit them, upload them, do the tagging, do the description, all of these things. I'm at Starbucks doing part 2. Reading. Just the reading. Man. Kind of heavy, you know. Long chapter, not a lot going on. Long-ish chapter for this book. 22 pages, not incredibly long, but be nice if something happened here eventually. Sure would be nice if something happened here eventually. Didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night. Boy, sure is a long day. Sure is a lot going on today, baby. Gotta go get my miles. Gotta go. And all of a sudden I found myself waking up. In a public place. I was reading this book and I fell asleep at Starbucks. Stephen King Damn you. This has been boring so far. There have been a lot of ideas introduced, but nothing has come to pass. No fruit has grown. So I have to say, this point through the book, we're 106 pages, I believe. 107. We're about to start 109. And it's put me to sleep. Not a great sign. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here, chapter titles suck. These chapter titles suck. Looking forward at next chapter, the chapter is titled First Night, Now You Know, Jack, A Simple Woodcutter, Therapy, My Father's Visit, Lynn Parza, Mr. Bowditch Makes a Promise. Now I know everything that's going to happen in the chapter. Not only do I know everything that's going to happen in the chapter, it already sounds boring. There's no reason for these chapter titles. If you like them, let me know. Let me know what you like about them. Let me know what it is that's tickling your fancy here. But at this point, they've just become lists. That's all I have for this video. If you want to help me out here on the channel, it really does the trick. If you decide to hit that like button, if you were here by chance but not designed, consider hitting the subscribe button to make sure that YouTube continues to suggest these videos to you in the future. And we will be back Wednesday with Chapter 7, Part 7 of a 32-ish part series here on the channel. I hope to see you then.